I'm your host, Dan Anderson, and I'd like to welcome you tonight. Tonight's guest is a friend of mine. I've known him for a while. Tonight, if you have any questions about EZScore or Scorekeep program, you're in the right place. And today we're going to explore both the old and the new tools designed to help Bible Quiz run more smoothly and efficiently. Our guest today is Michael Scott, with more than 20 years of experience in Bible Quiz. In 2017, Michael jumped in with both feet, and he began to help further develop the Bible Quiz software. Y'all know, I'm sure some of you know that Larry Mullins is the creator of Scorekeep and EZScore, but Michael has taken it to a new level. He handles tech support, but like we'll talk about in a minute, he is not the only he's not your tech support person. He's here to help us all get better at this. And he knows all the ins and outs. Maybe maybe I'm sticking him out there too far, but he knows all the ins and outs of EZScore and Scorekeep. If you ever wondered how or why you should use these programs, this episode is clearly designed for you, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So while I do this intro, make sure that you get your questions ready. We'll be taking them from you in the chat section. So without further ado, that was a rough start for me. You'd think I'd be seasoned and polished by now, Michael, but once again, that is not true. I am fulfilling a role that needs to be done, and I hope someday we'll have a much smoother and more gracious host in the future that can handle all this tech stuff better. But welcome, Michael. I'm glad to have you on the podcast tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And don't worry, we all make mistakes. And as I age, technology gets faster than I remember it being too. So
exactly correct. I hope that when people see that, hey, Dan Anderson can do this, I certainly can run my own Bible Quiz podcast. So that would be good. And I have to admit that one thing has begun to happen. I am seeing more people. It's either that or the Facebook and Instagram algorithms are showing me more posts by people that are doing interviews and hosting and doing training videos and hosting chats about the Bible Quiz ministry. So anyway, thanks, Michael, for being here.
Absolutely.
Let's start with that comment. I'll tell if my guests don't already know, I usually warm up with the guest for about 15 minutes. So Michael got on here, and Michael had a sincere, genuine concern. So I'll let Michael address it right quickly. Michael, so you don't have time to address the more than 100 casual users who work on EZScore or work with EZScore?
I don't. I live out in Seattle, and there's a lot of technology in Seattle, and it's easy to think that we're this bubble exists everywhere. And if there's one thing that Bible Quiz has taught me, it's that there's a wide range of capabilities and just knowledge when it comes to technology. And I don't have time to debug every little issue, but I do want to hear from people, because while I can't answer every question the same for everybody. Like, how do I use Scorekeep? There's always these one-off scenarios that are really interesting, or something that goes wrong. We want to make things better. And really what the resources like this conversation here is about is how can we amplify what we're doing, so it's not just one-off conversations with each person. And then the other truth is I don't have a relationship with every single person and every single coordinator like the district and regional coordinators do, because I'm not talking to those people every day. And so all of this is trying to figure out ways to amplify the knowledge that we've got, and to create more feedback channels without saying, hey, just if your computer is not working or this app isn't working, call me every time.
No, I think that what happens in the Southeast region, where I have the privilege of being the regional coordinator, I get those phone calls a lot of times from the district or the league coordinators in the different districts asking those questions. So we try to, at least I try to be the first. If I can't answer it, then I will say, well, let me contact Michael, because if I can't answer it, then we move on. And I know lots of times people do the same thing with Larry Mullins or the different
absolutely.
Todd Papendick, they'll call him. So we have the rudimentary basics. And part of what we're doing tonight is we're introducing Michael Scott to a lot of you for the first time. And it's not so much so that you can call him, but so you can understand kind of one of the people behind the scenes. So we're not always talking about those guys, Michael, you're that guy. You're that guy that people either love or they hate, and they love you because at the end of the day, the software that was designed by Larry and now even improved by you guys is saving us time. Larry saved us time on Saturdays. Michael, you're saving us time during the week. The time to prep, the time to pull data, the time to work with Scorekeep. It's revolutionized. And I can say I was there. I've been with Bible Quiz for more than 25 years now. And back in the day, it was an Excel spreadsheet, and that was high tech. The very first district finals I went to, Michael, it was 9 people sitting in a circle with legal pads, and we would yell out people's names and ask them how many scores, what their score, how many points they had that day. Doing wins and losses is simple, but when you start to do individual scores for awards for district final, yeah. So, well, I told you
Actually,
a little bit
can I add
Yes,
something there? I think that one of the things that when we think about the mission of what we're trying to do with technology, and you talked about the evolution that happened, is really what we want to do is we want to use technology to make it possible so that you can do what Bible Quiz is about. And Bible Quiz is not about can you tabulate scores well. It's can you disciple kids at any level to learn the Word of God better, and frankly, not just that, but also just day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And we don't want anyone to be penalized because you are bad at math or you are bad at writing things down. And obviously there's some part of that you have to do, but the more that we can level the playing field, and even with some of the newer apps, if you're not aware of like the coaching app that Kevin Gallo has been working on, which is trying to say, hey, how can I help you research as fast as possible so that maybe we don't need 2 coaches on the bench, we need 1, now we can have twice as many teams. And so everything that we're doing is about that. And I have to keep reminding myself of it because as a software developer, I keep thinking, oh, I can just make it a little bit better. But the question I have to ask myself is it good enough? Is it at the spot where it needs to be to get it, that it's good enough? And that's really hard for me. But our mission is really just how do we make it so that you can spend time on the important things, and how do we engage people who can't be there? So if you look at live scoring on BibleQuiz.com, the whole goal of that is if I send my kid away, I want to be able to see like, what's going on with them right now. What's happening, what's their stats, and we're going to continue to make those things even better.
Yeah. And I think that's a good segue. I'll make another statement is one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of video training right now is because it's evolving so quickly. Just this last week, right? You did a software update 10.6 point whatever, right? 24.3, and it just continues to change. And so I think it's important that our audience and our users understand that that's part of the issue is that it's changing so quickly. So, and there are resources out there, right? There's resources on the national registration. If you go to the BibleQuiz.com page, there's links to scorekeeping training, and how to use Scorekeep. I'm kind of fond of the guy who did the Scorekeep training. I think that was me. And that's how old it was. That's where I was cutting my teeth in this technology. But Michael, maybe tell me a little bit more. I'm gonna skip the introductory comment because we had kind of talked about your background and how you got involved in Bible Quiz. Maybe you can share with us what's the purpose? What when you guys sat down and said, "Hey, let's start the national registration site." What was the thought process behind that?
Interesting question. So when I started taking things over from Larry, it happened piecemeal, and I think that there's an element of trust that had to be built because Larry and I didn't really know each other that well. And so we started with the registration site because that's where the biggest gap was. So at that time in 2017, there was EZScore and Scorekeep. They existed as they did, but there wasn't a great way to actually register people. And we had some conversations with the national office at TBQ Nationals and some other things, but really it came down to there wasn't an easy way to do that. And so however you did it, you had to manually enter people. And the goal was, how do we create persistent data about people, meet over meet, to make it really easy to enter those things in? And it's grown from there, but that was the goal.
Perfect. That's great. And everybody, I know that Santiago and I know that Ashley, you have questions. Please type them in there now. I can ask them. We don't have to ask my questions. We're more than happy to answer your questions. So now's the time to write those in there. Speaking of EZScore, because you talked about that earlier, and if you don't know how to do EZScore, watch the video. That's kind of a mantra that we have as at a district or a national or regional level. Make sure that your scorekeepers are watching the videos. What's the number one tip that you would give people on how to use EZScore? Do you have a tip? Or maybe better yet, maybe let me rephrase that. Best way to use it, or how to maybe the hardest thing to overcome?
I don't know that there is a single one thing. I think one thing that often happens is people confuse themselves about what the two of them are for. And so the answer I give to that is if you think about what you would do with a paper score sheet, that's what EZScore is for.
Okay.
And the biggest thing that I would say is with the older software, if you've been around for a while, we used to load databases with flash drives and stuff like that. I would say stop doing that. Use the registration site to upload those things and download them back down. Even if you don't use registration, if for whatever reason you are copying things or whatever, you can have events that didn't have registration and you upload databases to it. Now, why does that matter? It matters for two reasons. It matters because it makes it easier if you had a mistake and you can sync them down to the device. It also, by uploading it, you're also putting it into the archives. And so if you want things in the archives of biblequiz.com so that, parents and quizzers can go see things, that's what you want to do. And you may not know this, but if you go to biblequiz.com under JBQ or TBQ, you can do a quizzer search. And you can type in anyone's name that we have in our records. Now, people might have misspelled them, and I can't help that. It tries to do a more intelligent search, but you can see what they did across those. So like I went back and found my brother or myself or others all the way back to the 1963 or 1962 timeframe of any data that we have. And so the more data that we get imported, the more accessible it is to everybody. So even if you're manually entering scores because you're still using paper score sheets, everything can be done incrementally. So you can say, okay, I'm just going to set it up and I'm going to enter them manually, but then it goes into the history. And that just makes it more fun for people over time as they engage with the ministry.
Well, and I think that's a good point. Also, though, to me, one of the big benefits is the ability for people to, when they're registering, if one of the purposes of my ministry as a Jewish missionary is family discipleship, but so families go from birth to, I got kids that are in their 40s that we still talk frequently, and we talk about things of the Lord, and we still disciple. But part of that is that the ability to just continue to have kids. I helped a church the other day just register her kids, and she didn't think her kids were in there because she was brand new to TBQ. And I said, oh no, they're in there. And sure enough, they were in there. And so you're right. And so instead of having to type out 7 or 8 names, it's all there, and their birth dates are all there, and their grades are there. So it's all there.
It's interesting you bring that up, because one of the reasons the coach that I work with here, Kevin, has not changed the teams as often is because the registration site makes it so easy to copy teams event over event. So he's like, well, I could change them, or I could just go with the versions of the teams that were already there. So when software helps you be lazy, it's almost better.
Yeah. And one other comment, because I know that I'm still hoping that someone will ask a question in the, maybe I'm not looking at the right spot. So, nope, we're good. All right. One of the comments was made is that, you can purchase, a lot of people maybe are hesitant to jump in to EZScore portion because the cost of tablets, but I used EZScore on Windows laptops when it first came out, and then went to Windows tablets. And then now I've gone to remanufactured ONN type of tablets, Android tablets, 8-inch tablets, 10-inch tablets that, are rather inexpensive. But right now, I think it was today and yesterday, you could buy a refurbished Kindle for hardly anything, $50. So I don't know.
And that's not uncommon. Like that's happened before. My biggest recommendation when it comes to device selection is to go with the 10-inch screen.
Yeah.
That if you go smaller than an 8-inch, we have not tested it with that. But I highly recommend the 10-inch screen because you'll just have a better experience as a scorekeeper. But $50 might even that might be a lot, but it's significantly better than when we had several $100s for a Windows, a bottom of the barrel Windows tablet.
It's just a different tech comment, but it'll go along with another justification. So if you're a church or you're a district coordinator or league coordinator or the district and you purchase these tablets, they can be used to play Kahoot, which is another avenue that we're opening up quite a bit, and be able to play both junior Bible quiz and teen Bible quiz Kahoots using those same tablets. So, and I did push the envelope, Michael. I do have 7-inch Androids, and I did use it for one season. And it can be done, but that's where you get those 13, 14-year-olds to be the scorekeepers. They have more nimble fingers, and they can run that better. So
yeah, the benefit of the Android devices is we found that it's actually just a little bit more standardized in how they go, and that's why we make recommendations for screen size, because the more that things can be the same, the easier it is for us to help people.
yeah.
And sometimes you get what you pay for.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I would agree. If you can afford the Kindles, I think that they're the way to go. Or even there's some people that still want to use the Windows.
Sure.
There's some Microsoft people that continue to want to use Windows products. So, and I think that's great. But whatever suits your budget. I think the biggest thing is the ability to use the information. To be able to use the information and get access to it is really the biggest thing. So, like you said, I think it's a great benefit to us if we can continue to expand on our use of EZScore. Another question for you, thinking about the future. All right. Thinking about the future, if you could put your prophetic hat on, where would you like to see the software go? What if you could just I don't want to say wave a magic wand, but pray and God would bring it into existence. Where would you like to see the software go?
There's a couple places that I want to see it go. I want to, in the shorter term, I want us to see Scorekeep move entirely online, so that you don't have this app that you have to run. There's a couple reasons for it. One is it allows us to ensure that everyone is using the same version. It removes this whole concept of having to create databases and all those other things, because it will just be there. But the other big thing is there are non-Windows device users, and we're never going to create a Scorekeep for Mac. And so because of that, by getting onto the web, it gives us the most flexibility. Then you can do things from your phone. And in that same vein, I am not a website developer. I've figured out how to do it, but we want to kind of revamp the registration and BibleQuiz.com website and kind of merge them together and make them more phone friendly and just a better flow. Those are the two places that I see us making a lot of traction when it comes to score keeping. The other big place that I honestly see a lot of stuff changing around the software is around the coaching app. That's where I think there's going to be a lot of innovation to help coaches, because when we think about the, I guess, spheres of impact of the things that we can do, coaches, there's way more coaches than there are scorekeepers, and there's way more scorekeepers than there are, let's say, question writers, which is why where we focus our efforts is trying to make those things better. There are some other things that are gonna change. They're probably more technical that aren't really worthwhile bringing up here. I think the other big thing is we will probably see more money flow through the registration system rather than having people have to collect them through checks and other things, because it's just easy. So you want to collect money as part of your registration, we can do it now, and the fees are called out there. Any app that we have, and I'll just answer the question that Ashley asked, is all apps that we create are on BibleQuiz.com/apps. So anything else is either an older version of our software or it's not directly supported by us. And a lot of the software that we are doing is coming under the umbrella of Northwest Tech Ministries. And it's just a nonprofit that's associated here in the Northwest, and also has a partnership with the national offices and national people. So it's just putting it into an organization, whereas before now it's just been kind of done by like people.
So you would prefer them to download everything then from the BibleQuiz.com?
.com/apps.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if they find a product in the Microsoft store, they're not gonna do that, right?
So the products in the Microsoft store are old.
Okay.
And if you download them, they'll tell you to download the ones from BibleQuiz.com/apps. And the primary reason for that was we can upgrade versions much easier and much faster if there's a bad bug in the BibleQuiz.com/apps versions than we can with other ones. So on your computers, the easiest way to figure out if you have that version is it always has in parentheses afterwards BibleQuiz.com. So it says EZScore, BibleQuiz.com, Scorekeep,
Okay.
BibleQuiz.com.
Okay, that's good.
And if you're worried about things changing too frequently, we try not to release things on a Saturday because
that's
when
good.
meets tend to be.
Appreciate
We generally try to do them on Mondays. And as the seasons go on, we slow down.
Yeah.
If you want the newest, the latest and greatest, in the file menu of both Scorekeep and EZScore, there's something that says, I think, pre-release or beta. Then you get the newer versions versus getting the more stable versions. But here at the beginning of the season, we're making changes to how things work. And there's some immediate things that are coming around reporting that will be coming out in the next month or so, that is causing some updates. But pretty much all of the improvements we're making around scoring is all online. We're not putting it into Scorekeep.
Let me ask a question, Michael. So it's Saturday morning, right? And I haven't turned my devices on for a month since the previous quiz meet, right? It's Saturday morning and I'm opening it up and my tablet says, hey, there's a new update. It's 10.6.224, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ignore that and go ahead and at this point, can I just ignore that and go ahead and run my match and worry about doing an update on Monday? Or do I take the time Saturday morning to go ahead and do that update? What's your recommendation?
It's really a question of whether or not you want. It's a risk question. I personally would update them because I know that the releases that are there work. The temptation is don't update, and then the next time you don't update again. So at some point, the versions that you have will just stop working.
Yeah.
We don't support versions in perpetuity. So probably want to turn them on before Saturday.
Yeah.
If everything is working, you might be okay. But the interesting thing with the scenario you just described is you have to also download the databases. And so there might be features that get used because you might have used a newer Scorekeep, but you're using an older EZScore. And we do our best to make those things work, but it may or may not work. So personally, I would always upgrade, but there's always a risk.
Okay. That's good. Also, Santiago did ask a question. I have one question for you now regarding procedures during matches. What steps do scorekeepers take in the event of overtime and sudden death?
Good question. So for JBQ or TBQ, I believe that we default the point values for 21, 22, and 23.
You do.
So you just enter those scores the way you would for the first 20 questions. For sudden death, we only support currently 24 questions, and that's actually a legacy reason, and because we've only really tested with that many. But the way that the underlying database is, we could support more now that we got rid of the old database format. Some of that was left over from the old apps. So it's never really been a big enough ask that we've done something about it. But for overtime, just put the scores in for 21, 22, and 23. And we do have support for playoff matches as well, which we can talk about in a different setting. But there is support for playoffs if you want to go do playoffs. And the only playoff rounds, not just playoff questions. And playoffs in that form, the biggest benefit is it doesn't actually count towards their total scores. It just counts towards their ranking, which is super beneficial because then you don't have to do more math.
Yes. We like that better. All right. I hope that answers your question. Yep. Great. Any other questions? I'm going to begin to wrap this up here in a minute. Michael does have things to do. I'm grateful for him being here tonight. I would not be a good a good family discipleship guy if I didn't encourage families. So I'll leave it at that. I do want to remind everyone. Hi, what's that?
Before you do that, let me just add, and I appreciate what you said,
Absolutely.
but if you have issues with your app, there's a report issue button in the apps, and you want to take the latest version because that has some fixes around that. If you're on the registration site, in the menu in the top right, there's a feedback button. If you have feedback, give us feedback. Those are all great channels. Like if you have ideas about how to do things or questions, to also ask. It's a lot easier than a phone call when an email comes in about a very specific question, but that allows us to collate that feedback and see what's necessary or will help the most people to solve problems.
Good. And I'll add this to kind of summarizing all this. If you're in need of help, I'm available for help if you're in the Southeast region or anywhere in the country. And Rob Sipes for Ashley and those of you in the South Dakota, North Dakota, all along that North Central. Rob Sipes has been the National Festival tech guy. So he knows tablets and he knows the Scorekeep software, as does most of your regional coordinators know that. So I would start with them or your district coordinator to see, and some of you are district coordinators, so you can do that. Let me go ahead and wrap up. Big thank you to Michael Scott for being here tonight. This is not Michael's one and only appearance here. We're going to, him and I are committed to providing some more short videos to talk about specific things in both EZScore and Scorekeep that'll make your life easier. Those will be announced, and I'll publish those via the my email post and Facebook and Instagram. But thank you, Michael, for being here tonight. Grateful to have you and your assistance. Remind you all next week that we will have national champion Brian Rossignol from Douglas Assembly of God in Wyoming. He'll be sharing his experience with using games. You probably think that if I'm going to have the national champion coordinator on the podcast, we'll be talking about competition, but no, we're going to talk about games, because utilizing games in our Bible quiz practices kind of helps everybody participate, not just your top tier quizzers. And so you don't want to miss that. Thanks again, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end the podcast here in just a moment. God bless you all. Thank you all for being here. If you have any more questions, you can just ask them now, and we'll hang out for just a minute.